What's up, everyone? So it's like good news for anyone who actually cares about digital privacy and crypto, kind of same shot. And also, I guess, users of TrueNAS. Magic Grants just released 4 powerful applications for TrueNAS Scale, which is like another version of TrueNAS. Now, this kind of immediately begs the question, like, what is Magic Grants and what are these applications? Well, basically, Magic Grants is a nonprofit. So if I had to sum it up in one word, that's how I'd put it. Another thing that's important is like no one sponsored this actual video. Like I feel like I have to actually highlight this because I don't actually take on any sponsorships right now. Soon enough, probably spin up memberships. I was going to do it at 20,000 subscribers, but it's had a lot of projects going. But you guys saw, which is basically what will allow you, the viewer, to sponsor me if you're up for it. I'd rather be sponsored that way than like have some random soulless company support the channel and have to cram their service down your throat with me being a parrot. So basically, Magic Grants is a nonprofit organization that focuses on funding privacy technologies and crypto infrastructure in general. They specifically put resources into Monero-related projects and other privacy-enhancing tools that are actually out there. They're the ones who took the time to actually develop these applications, get them working properly, and then submit them to the TrueNAS App Store. The 4 applications that they've actually released are a Monero node, Monero Wallet RPC, Arti, which we talked about before. It's just a Rust implementation of Tor, and I2P, shock. Each of these basically dramatically enhances what you can do with the TrueNAS system, especially if privacy matters to you at all, or anonymity in that case. So again, that begs the question, what is TrueNAS Scale then? More importantly, for most of us, is what's the price tag of it? And basically, TrueNAS Scale is like your own personal data center. It's a free operating system, which is open source, and it turns regular storage hardware into like a really powerful network storage system, or NAS for short. Instead of trusting companies like Dropbox or Google with your files, TrueNAS lets you store everything on your hardware and your hardware alone, which means you control it. And this, again, matters if privacy or anonymity matters to you. Now, you might be wondering, what's the difference between regular TrueNAS and TrueNAS Scale? What's the price difference? And the price difference is there is no price. Like, that's the kind of cool thing about it. But the original TrueNAS, which is formerly known as FreeNAS, is based on FreeBSD. And I know no one could have seen that one coming, but it focuses mainly on file storage. TrueNAS Scale, on the other hand, is Linux-based and adds container support, virtualization, and like more diverse app ecosystem, I guess you should say. Scale literally refers to its ability to scale across multiple systems. So if you're looking to run these privacy apps, you specifically need TrueNAS Scale, not the regular TrueNAS core version. And yes, it's completely free. Like I said before, both of them. You just need the hardware to run it on. And you could use an old computer or build a dedicated NAS system if you want. If you remember, back in like 2016, Dropbox basically had this massive data breach that happened that exposed something like 68 million credentials. Or how, when it came out that Google was actually letting third-party developers read people's emails in Gmail, if you're not a fan of that, which you kind of have to deal with, right? Like when you're using someone else's servers, you're basically at their mercy. And with TrueNAS, you eliminate that entire category of risk. Your data stays yours. And what makes this exciting is that TrueNAS Scale can run apps like kind of like how your phone does, right? Like your phone has an app store. This kind of has an app store. It extends what your storage system can actually do far beyond just holding files. And it also makes the overall process of getting these actual applications and setting them up much easier because it's basically click and go. This is really a good balance when you lower the friction barrier that exists for people, potential users, end users, whatever you want to call them, and make something easier to use that provides actual real value to that person. Like the end users are much, much more likely to actually use it. And this can lead to some serious outcomes at the end of the day that are absolutely positive. So now that we understand what TrueNAS Scale is, what are these like new apps and like who actually cares? What's the details on them? Running your own Monero node is a huge privacy upgrade. But to understand why, we need to get into like kind of a little technical detail of how Monero actually works. See, when you use Monero through someone else's node, like a remote server, you're exposing information about your wallet activity, if nothing else, to a third party. They can see when you're online and when you're making transactions and potentially be able to piece that information together that details your financial habits. That might be an issue for you. Just from a privacy standpoint, it kind of should be. Like, we should all seek to have complete independence when it comes to these things. The Monero Node app for TrueNAS Scale runs Monero. Probably said that wrong, which is a full Monero daemon. This software downloads and validates the entire Monero blockchain. Now, keep in mind, this is currently over like 150 gigs. I think last time I seen it. I mean, you also have it in a 50 gigabyte pruned version, but that's another story. It connects to peers in the network and processes and broadcasts transactions. By running this yourself, you completely eliminate the need to connect to remote nodes. This is a massive deal, like OpSec-wise, if nothing else. From a technical standpoint, it means that your wallet view key basically never leaves your control. When using a remote node, for example, your wallet actually has to scan the blockchain using this key, and that potentially exposes your information, allows you to, in some cases, be tracked. We saw some pretty big news from Chainalysis coming out about them poisoning nodes, and that's why another reason why it's important for you to run your own. Your IP isn't directly linked to your transaction at the remote node level, right? So your wallet can't be fed false information about the state of the network or anything else. You contribute to the network too, which is obviously decentralized, by providing another node for the Monero network. And you get faster transaction processing because there's no network latency between like your wallet and the actual node. And the way that like Magic Grants actually built this app, you can customize advanced Monero node settings directly from the TrueNAS instance. You can adjust your outbound connections and set up things like restricted node operations and choose your blockchain storage location. Hopefully, right? Like, it'd be kind of important where 150 gigs go. But most importantly, configure the node to connect through Tor or I2P for added anonymity and privacy. And this app uses the official Monero binaries and allows you to expose specific peer-to-peer and RPC ports for external access if you want to share your node with others or access it remotely. It also includes advanced options for things like pruning the blockchain, which we discussed earlier, bring it down to a third of the size if storage space becomes a concern. Remember, like when the FBI actually tracked down, it's Bitcoin, so it's different, but they tracked down Bitcoin users by working with nodes those users actually connected to. So it's a legit attack vector. Even if we're just looking at it comparison, I know like, oh, technology mitigates it. Yeah, I get it, but you get my point. But that becomes much harder when you're actually running your own node and routing it through anonymity networks or like these overlay networks. Now, unlike Bitcoin, obviously, Monero already has strong privacy and anonymity features, but running your own node eliminates yet another potential leakage of metadata. So the other app that they're releasing is Monero Wallet RPC. So, like, what the hell is an RPC anyways? Well, basically, RPC stands for Remote Procedure Call, and it's basically a way for software to talk to other software over a network. The Monero Wallet RPC lets you control your wallet through code instead of through like some graphical interface, which I know a few people that are amped about things like they really like things like that. So the CLI versus the GUI. The wallet RPC exposes a JSON RPC API that performs any wallet operations programmatically. So like you can create a new wallet with specific security parameters. You can generate addresses for receiving payments like on the fly. You can do things like check balances across multiple accounts in one shot if you want. You can create and sign transactions with priority levels. You can split transactions to avoid certain blockchain analysis techniques. Very cool. And you can verify transaction signatures. You can also like do things like view and export security keys. You could set up reoccurring scheduled transactions. Like you get the idea. You could do a lot of stuff. Now, this might not seem exhilarating and super exciting at first, but it's actually really, really powerful in terms of just what you can do, but also really for operational security. It means that you can keep your wallet on your secure NAS at home while controlling it completely remotely. And you can set up automated transactions without exposing your main system. And you can do it in a way that promotes your own OpSec even more. So you could build a store, basically, if you wanted to, that accepts Monero payments just in general, and then automatically processes them as an example of like what you can do with this. These wallets can connect to your own Monero node, which also runs on TrueNAS, obviously, as we've already covered, or to remote nodes, which I wouldn't do, but maybe you might need to do that. All communication between your applications and the wallet happens over encrypted hypertext transfer protocol. And you can configure advanced authentication to prevent unauthorized access. So think about it this way. Every time that you manually access your crypto, you're potentially exposing yourself to a slew of different things. But like, for example, it could be keyloggers, right? Screen captures, malware like that, or just someone looking over your shoulder, right? Like that's a real issue too. Shoulder surfing is no joke. So with the wallet RPC, you can minimize those interactions and still use your money. So for developers and advanced users, this enables some really powerful privacy workflows. You could build a complete air gap setup where one system prepares transactions and another signs them, or you could create a Monero-powered service that requires no human intervention to be able to process payments. You could deploy a donation system that generates unique addresses for each donor for things like enhanced privacy of the donors. Another thing is you could build custom integrations with like other privacy tools. The RPC interface basically follows a documented standard that exists. So like any software that works with Monero's RPC protocol will work with this TrueNAS implementation as well. It's not some like random spin-off that they made. So that's pretty awesome. But moving on away from Monero and towards Arti. This is the other application that they put in. Tor has been around for a while at this point, and it's kind of the gold standard for anonymity online, but it's written in C. So it's C-based code base. It has gotten really complex and clunky over the years. And Arti basically is essentially Tor rebuilt from scratch in Rust, which again, we covered in the last video, which is a programming language that's designed more for memory safety, thread safety, kind of more security, I guess you would say. I'm not a programmer. It's just my basic understanding of it. Could be completely wrong about that. But from a technical perspective, Arti basically is a significant improvement in more than one way. It has a modular architecture that separates components like network and cryptography and directory handling. It has improved resistance to things like side channel attacks, which is another thing that we discussed in the other video. There's better error handling throughout the code base, and it's more consistent API design for people who are like developers. It's also significantly smaller and more auditable, so that makes it a lot easier to validate that it's doing what it's supposed to. And what's really interesting about Arti at the end of the day is the implementation through TrueNAS is that it's one of the first major developments of Arti in something like a Docker environment. The app creates a SOCKS 5 proxy on your NAS that any application can use to route traffic through Tor. So it also includes configuration options for connecting to things like Tor bridges if your internet connection is censored or is being watched. According to Magic Grant's Cuprate, which is a Monero node written in Rust, plans to integrate with Arti directly. And this means we could eventually see like a fully Rust-based privacy stack with Monero and Tor working together, which would be a massive improvement for security. Which kind of like begs the question, well, why, right? Like when dealing with privacy critical software like cryptocurrency nodes, for example, and anonymity overlay networks, a single memory corruption bug could potentially have like really devastating effects, some of which could be like, obviously, crashing your node, right? That would be a problem. And that could be automated, like denial of service attack, for example, or it could allow remote code execution. Never fun to happen to your systems. It could leak private keys or other sensitive information. It could just basically, it could lead to a compromise of the anonymity properties of the system in regards to like the entire privacy stack. And it becomes much more resilient to these classes leaking private keys or other sensitive information. Now, this could lead to a compromise of the anonymity properties of the system. Rust's kind of modern design compared to C makes the code more maintainable, which indirectly improves security by making it easier to review said code for things like logical flaws and to implement new security features when they're actually needed. With Arti on a NAS, you eventually will be able to easily host like an Onion service website that are only accessible through Tor. So like imagine being able to host that instance of Darknet Lantern that Nihilist has finally released. Future versions of the app will be able to include configuration tools for setting up these services directly from the TrueNAS interface, like supposedly. But with free speech continually under attack, running something like a personal blog that's completely anonymous and resistant to censorship, or providing access to your Monero node only through Tor so nobody even knows it exists on the regular internet, very well may be a big part of our kind of like dystopian future we all kind of share. Like we seem to have less and less liberty over time. It's not like a comment on any kind of politics or left to right, none of that nonsense. I'm just saying in general, like we seem to have less and less liberty over time as opposed to more and more of it. It's just my observation. Be careful though. Arti is still in active development and the Tor project doesn't recommend actually using it for things like highly sensitive tasks yet. So it's definitely something to take note of. That blog or the Darknet Lantern instance may have to wait a little bit, right? But by installing it now, you're helping test the future of anonymity technology, which is really a badass thing to do. I2P, also known as the Invisible Internet Project, is similar to Tor in some ways, but is built specifically for things like hidden services rather than for like accessing the regular internet anonymously or the ClearNet anonymously. Having I2P on your NAS means you can both access the I2P network and host services within it. So let's get into the like technical details of why I2P actually matters. Unlike Tor, which uses a circuit-based approach with directory servers, I2P uses a fully distributed peer-to-peer model with its own internal network database. All connections in I2P are end-to-end encrypted by default, and the network uses garlic routing, which basically is an enhanced version of onion routing. I actually did a comparison between I2P and Tor that you might want to check out if you find that interesting. It bundles multiple messages together in some cases to make traffic analysis even harder. For Monero users, this is really powerful because Monero has native I2P support built directly into the protocol. Yes, you absolutely heard that correctly. For those of you that didn't know, I know there are people on Dread that follow some morons who cry about I2P in general, but Monero, the crypto that all the markets that know anything actually use, has had native I2P support like for a long time because the developers recognized early on that network level privacy was essential to complement Monero's blockchain privacy features. And around like, they'll use like 2018 or 2019. I could totally have screwed that up. I don't know exactly, but like you can look it up. They implemented I2P connectivity directly in the Monero daemon code to prevent transactions, basically having like origin tracing and network level surveillance. The implementation allowed Monero nodes to establish connections through I2P as an alternative to ClearNet connections, making it obviously much harder for anyone to actually monitor which nodes are broadcasting transactions. Now, I know one particular Darknet market admin who cried about me shilling I2P a while ago. I'm not going to mention any names. If you're regular watchers of the show, I'm sure you know who it is. At the same time, like he runs a Monero-only market, which when I read that comment, is absolutely hilarious, as it showed me instantly how much he actually knows, which was also kind of scary to know for all his users on his site. I digress. This was all part of a much bigger strategy to create multiple layers of privacy protection in Monero, ensuring that even if like an adversary could somehow break the cryptographic privacy on the blockchain, they still couldn't actually trace the transaction back to the specific IP address or the specific user who did said transaction. So like your transactions can route through I2P using what's called outproxy connections. And if about toward kind of a similar way to think about it would be like an exit node. It added another layer of network privacy on top of Monero's already really strong privacy features that exist, like ring signatures and ring CT and like stealth addresses and all that stuff. The TrueNAS app uses the Java implementation of I2P, which basically is the original reference version with the most complete set of features that you can find, which is probably why they did it. Now, understandably, some people are turned off by the Java version due to its resource usage. I mean, for one, this implementation has undergone a bunch of different auditing and testing in comparison to any other I2P router. So, I mean, that is an upside to it. There are alternatives like I2PD, which is written in C++, which uses fewer resources and might be faster, and Kovri, which is another C++ in implementation, and I might have pronounced that wrong. Sorry about that, by the Monero team themselves, but currently it's not really going anywhere. The I2P Java router, however, remains the most mature, kind of best maintained version with the most active development community, and it runs a service on your NAS and creates a SOX proxy that lets your other applications get access to I2P, kind of like Arti did, where you can use it throughout the systems or even like your LAN. While the Java implementation requires more RAM than the alternatives for the NAS device, the downfall is the Java implementation does require more RAM than the alternatives. But for a NAS device with sufficient resources, it definitely provides the most reliable and kind of feature-complete I2P experience. Now, comparing I2P versions is a big task. I'm not going to do that in this video. If that's something you're interested, let me know in the comments, and we can absolutely do that. But basically, what's really important, in my opinion, about making I2P available as a one-click install on TrueNAS is that the potential network effect that it could really have. One of I2P's limitations has always kind of been network density, right? Like you need enough nodes to provide good anonymity and good connectivity to all the people. So Tor kind of steals the spotlight like every time. It also steals funding money. I'm not saying like the Tor project actually steals. It's people freak out in the comments. The feds basically give a ton of money to the Tor project. They also have a halfway decent ability to raise money. The Tor project does, not the feds. I2P, though, has not been so lucky. They have no real big federal handouts, and nor do they get these massive donations through these massive campaigns. Like, their donations come nowhere near what Tor gets. As more people install this app, we're likely to see I2P grow as a network, hopefully substantially, which improves privacy for everyone and anonymity. And this could lead to more Monero nodes operating over I2P, more development, more services being hosted there, and a more comprehensive alternative to Tor when you actually need it. And the thing is, we never actually know when we'll need it. And that's kind of the scary thing. I do love Tor, and I haven't like tattooed on me. But I also have a lot of love for I2P. Now, a while ago, the Tor network was suffering massive DDoSes, and we saw a lot of users migrate from Tor to I2P, and it like freaked the developers out. Like, we saw a lot of reactions, especially in Reddit, in the subreddit I2P, from Already Burnt, who basically freaked out, and him and Hugbunter kind of got into an argument. I really like Already Burnt. He does not like darknet markets at all. We're kind of the opposites, but we both like overlay networks, both like anonymity. So we're a lot alike in that sense. And I do have a lot of respect for him. He does a lot of work, gives up a lot of his time for it. So big shout out to Already Burnt on Reddit. Big shout out to the I2P devs and just the network as a whole. I really hope to see that they get a lot more donations in the future. Anyways, back to what we're talking about. Now, like I said, I2P does work differently and can be a little harder to block in some instances because there's no centralized directory service. Like, you can look up right now the IP of those. Every node participates in routing, making the network highly resilient to things like censorship. So having both Tor and I2P gives you some kind of like overlay network redundancy. Like, if one network becomes compromised or blocked, you have alternatives. This is my main point. Like, I think people having a kind of single point of failure, which is horrible in engineering, basically in regards to overlay networks, that is kind of a big issue that no one really talks about. And the other thing to keep in mind is, like, it can cost you upwards of $2,000 a year easily to host something like a Tor exit node. Not talking about a relay. That excludes any legal fees or any other issues that you may run into, right? Which kind of gives the upper hand to intelligence agencies. In some ways, obviously that's debatable, but with I2P, because it natively doesn't allow you to communicate with the ClearNet, you don't really have to worry about that issue if you want to do something like host a relay. So this comes to, like, what does this all mean for your OpSec, right? Like, all these tools basically improve your security posture in a few ways that are absolutely worth understanding in depth. And you're reducing things like trust requirements for other places instead of trusting remote servers, for example, run by people that you don't know. You're running critical privacy infrastructure on hardware that you actually control. This is not like just philosophical in any way. It's basically mathematical reduction of risk in your threat model. And that can literally be quantified. Like, every third party you remove from your OpSec chain of exposure kind of reduces the attack surface exponentially, not linearly. If you have 5 potential points of compromise and you eliminate 3 of them, like, you haven't just improved security by 60% or whatever it is, you fundamentally transformed your security model by default. So the second thing is you're creating a defense in depth, so to speak, with technical separation. By combining multiple privacy technologies, for example, running the Monero node through Tor or I2P, you create independent security layers that are separated. And these are layers that someone has to go through if they want to unravel them. So these operate on different protocols and like code bases. So a vulnerability in one wouldn't necessarily affect the other ones necessarily, right? I didn't say for sure. If an adversary has an exploit for Tor, they still need separate exploits for I2P and Monero to fully compromise your operations, theoretically. Third, if you're keeping sensitive operations on hardware in your physical possession, that also eliminates an entire massive attack vector that exists, right? Like remote servers can be seized, companies can be compelled to hand over data with gag orders preventing them from even telling you. And cloud services can be hijacked without you even knowing about it, or you can just sign away your privacy in a TOS that you didn't read. Your NAS sitting in your house is a completely different story. Like this is especially true if it's like, say it's in your basement, right? And you have some, I don't know, hypothetically thermite rigged on top of it. Like don't do that. Like it's a funny example. Definitely don't do that. Any physical access attempt would be immediately noticed if it was in your basement. That's my point. This moves certain attacks from the realm of possible without detection to impossible without detection. And when a company reported to the feds that they had found the location of the Darknet market enhancer server, for example, the feds simply hopped on a plane and went to the server farm where they walked up and pulled it out and made a copy of it and then stuck it back in, except that copy ended up injecting a bunch of malicious code and stripping away privacy and anonymity, as well as they had some files with payloads that were added to them. So if 3 dudes in suits showed up trying to pull out the hard drive in your NAS, copy it, and then swap it out with a second one, I think you might notice that, right? Like fourth, you can implement things like proper technical compartmentalization when you have these things. Like these tools allow you to separate different aspects of your digital life with like actual networks and system boundaries, not just logical ones. For example, your Monero financial activities can run on a completely different network path than your personal browser, right? With completely different encryption, different protocols, and different security assumptions. Like this means that even if one system is compromised, the breach is contained by actual technical barriers, not just policies trying to dictate things. It's like the do not track in the header. Like sites don't care about that. It's not an actual barrier. Fifth, you gain resilience through self-sovereignty, right? Like when you depend on third-party services, you're suddenly super vulnerable to sudden shutdowns, policy changes, spying, legal actions, like against those services. Now, on the networking front, Magic Grants are developing more and more sophisticated tools for setting up and managing, Tor onion services and I2P hidden services. And this would include simplified configurations of things like authentication, but also like connection limiting and other kind of security features. So, for example, you could host your Monero's node RPC interface as a Tor onion service with client authentication, so only you can actually access it. But even like more cool is that you could do so from anywhere in the world with maximum privacy and anonymity. So the technical integration of these systems is very, very promising. Imagine running a Monero node that communicates through peers through I2P, exposes its RPC interface as a Tor hidden service, and feeds into a like Monero LWS instance that your mobile wallet connects to. Like that's absolutely a privacy setup that would have taken days to configure manually before, but with stuff like these apps and them making it so easy, it could be just a few clicks away. That like that kind of single fact alone is one that I absolutely love. Running your own service really, like, it's great privacy-wise, but it's really not just about that. It's also, in big part, about control and resilience and independence, right? Like, when you control these services yourself, again, you're not at the mercy of companies that might shut down tomorrow. So that's my really one of my biggest things. So even people who are like, I don't do anything on the darknet, still have a vested interest in this. This becomes really important for people who are in crypto accounts who might find their exchange accounts frozen or their transactions blocked by third-party services, or just the government decides, well, we don't like Monero, we're just going to seize it. How about that? It makes it much, much more difficult. For the Monero community specifically, this represents a major step towards making truly private finance accessible to more people, right? You can run a Monero node and have your family use it, teach them how to use it. Running a Monero node has traditionally required things like command line knowledge, but not just that, understanding networking and like manual security configuration. All of those things can take a little bit to learn, right? Like, and privacy shouldn't require a computer science degree. It just shouldn't. With stuff like these TrueNAS Scale apps, it kind of brings us a step closer to being like point and click simple on an entire network, like network wide. So if you're already running TrueNAS Scale, you can find these apps in the App Store right now. And you should run, if nothing, just set it up to run I2P. If you've been thinking about setting up your own NAS, this might be a good time or a good reason for you to actually take that step towards digital sovereignty and independence. The hardware requirements are not insane or extreme in any way. And even with a crappy system with a halfway decent processor and 8 gigs of RAM that you can get for $10, you can run this. You can have your own infrastructure. Something to think about. In any case, thank you for watching to the end, and I'll see you in the next video.